We got another one, a new offensive tackle to help build that great wall of Mirabal from the bayou to the beach. Kavion Broussard, welcome to the U.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We are available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. And this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. And speaking of finding the right talent, Miami has gotten 3 verbal commits over the past 3 days. So it's been busy in the Donno household, right? From 2025 quarterback Luke Nickel to Elias Rudolph, 2024 4-star defensive end, to last night, Miami lands a verbal commitment from 3-star offensive tackle Kavion Broussard out of Zachary, Louisiana. You can be sure Shannon Dawson, Miami's Cajun offensive coordinator, and even Lance Guidry, Miami's Cajun defensive coordinator, they had their fingerprints on this young man's recruitment because given Miami has such a Louisiana presence on the staff now, they're building a heavy presence in that state when it comes to recruiting. And it was interesting with Kavion Broussard, the buzz had started to build with him to Miami over the past couple of days. He verbally commits to the U despite not having come down just yet for a visit. He did want to come down for a visit early in the summer, but he wanted to bring his mom, and his mom couldn't travel with him. He decides to commit to the U anyway. This young man now, he's very quickly growing, and I mean literally growing. He's 6'6". Some sites even have him listed at 6'7", so he's in that range. 280 pounds now, and he's grown a lot over the past 9 months or so because Kavion Broussard played his junior season in high school last year around 245 pounds. He has gotten up to close to 280 since that point. So there is a projection that he can get much bigger than he is now by the time he settles in, a year from now in the collegiate level. So from what I've seen from Kavion Broussard, went down a little bit of a rabbit hole on him last night. Excellent patience in pass protection, which is nice to see. Seems very mature on the mental side of things. He also, as noted by my colleague Brian Smith at allhurricanes.com, does very well getting to the second level in run blocking. So in the case of Broussard, by the time he arrives at Miami, I don't think he's going to be too much of a project. I think as long as he keeps putting on weight, he's going to be ready to contribute pretty quickly at the U. Now, Kavion Broussard's offer list includes Florida State, TCU, Georgia Tech, Mizzou, Arkansas State, Tulane, Cincinnati, Mississippi State, and many others. Gabby Urrutia from inside the U was able to track down his offensive line coach at Zachary High School. Here's some of what his O-line coach Jason Davis had to say about Broussard. He said, "The sky is the limit. What he's really gotten better at is pad level. Being 6'6" and being able to strike and bend and lift and extend his hips, he's gotten so much better at that. He was always athletic," he says, but him just in the run game, being able to strike and lift with a low pad level. Like I said, the sky is the limit as long as he's getting in a college weight room, he says. This is a guy that could easily be 6'6", 320. Okay, with great bend, great athleticism, long arms, an unbelievable punch, Davis said. So, I like what Miami's doing the offensive line in this class. It's, very under the radar compared to last year's class headline, and obviously we're not done recruiting yet, but last year's class being headlined by 5-star Maui Noah, 5-star Okunlola. This year you're getting guys with a lot of upside like Derek Plaz and now Kavion Broussard, who is actually rated higher than the other offensive lineman Miami has grabbed so far. Juan Minaya, who is literally the size of a doorway. That's why they call him Juan Door Minaya. And Nino Francavilla, the center that Miami got a commitment from a couple of weeks ago. So I do think that this is a solid under-the-radar offensive line class for Miami so far. And I want to welcome Kavion Broussard to the U. Also on this episode, we are opening things up to you guys' questions, right? Because it was a busy, long weekend in recruiting, right? I think it's going to stay busy over the next couple of weeks or so on the recruiting front. Super busy as the Hurricanes are on the field in fall camp preparing for the 2023 season. We just watched that scrimmage at Canes Fest a couple of days ago, so we're opening up to questions. You guys have been hitting me up on our exclusive SMS texting service through Subtext. If you want to join our community, click the link in the show description below. You can ask me questions, one-on-ones. We answer some of these on the show. I give you recruiting updates, practice updates, show updates, and insights before we get them out on an episode of Locked On Canes. You can try it free for 14 days, and then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value there. Click the link in the show description below. We get a question from Chris who says, hey, is James Williams having a bad fall camp? Why was he the second team safety at Canes Fest? We've gotten more info on that, okay? And I told you guys, don't read too much into the scrimmage depth charts because these are not set in stone. So according to Miami's 24/7 page, the reason why James Williams was a second teamer on Saturday in the scrimmage and not a first teamer, that was disciplinary reasons. He's obviously, being disciplined for, I'm sure it's very minor because if it was something more serious, they do more than keep him on the second team in a scrimmage, but it was for disciplinary reasons. That's why Markeith Williams was a starting safety and James was a number 2. Because to answer the first part of your question, no, James is not having a bad fall camp. Based on what I've seen and heard, James Williams is having an excellent fall camp so far. Now, for Markeith Williams, who was the first teamer in his place, I think it's good for him to get some run with the first team, right? Because there could be some scenarios, there will be some scenarios this season when James is going to be lined up at outside linebacker. He's going to be in the box, and then you're going to need somebody to fill the other starting safety role. So, Markeith getting some experience, and he's having a good fall camp and had a very good spring, by the way. But the primary reason that James was not a first teamer, apparently it was something disciplinary, and it's not based on the way he's playing, because I'm telling you, he's playing fine. Got some good questions we're going to answer on the other side about who I feel more optimistic about or pessimistic about after watching the scrimmage. If I think a wide receiver this year is going to have a breakout the way that Colby Young had last year. And we have a lot of questions about recruiting because there are some big targets out there Miami is after who are uncommitted or guys they're trying to flip. So you know what we like to say on a Monday? We're only getting started. So keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. And I know you're keeping it locked to LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. And I know this works because I've found jobs through LinkedIn Jobs before. You add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile and spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, and then you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. And for the everydayers, we're going to have a Truth Teller session tomorrow, Truth Teller Tuesday with Bruce Warner. Throughout the week, we're going to get you ready through, what is this now, week 3 of fall camp, technically? Yeah, I think we're in week 3 of fall camp. So we're going to be giving you guys updates every single day here on Locked On Canes. So another one of your questions. This comes from 818 Callie Kane, who says, hey, after watching the scrimmage this past weekend at Canes Fest, do you feel more optimistic about this season and think we will be much improved than last year? 818, I know you mean well with this question. I'm not going to let myself fall into this trap because I can't make too many big picture conclusions based on what was an open practice. All right. That's what it was, right? Because there was some sloppiness. You had referees out there. There were some offensive procedural penalties and holding penalties. You had, it wasn't a great day throwing the football for your second string quarterback. You had some drops here and there. Things weren't perfect. Things were a little sloppy. With that said, I don't know if the scrimmage necessarily changed this or cemented this in my mind, but I have no doubt in my mind Miami is getting bigger at the point of attack. At the line of scrimmage, Miami is looking bigger on both sides of the football. I think Miami's defensive line is going to be really disruptive because we've gotten hints on that. And there have been some good O-line, D-line battles because there is no question when you add guys like Javion Cohen and Matt Lee and Francis Maui-Noah to your offensive line, that offensive line is going to be better than what it was last year, okay? But the defensive line is also looking better when you add a guy like Ruben Hurricane Bain and Akeem Mesidor, who didn't play in the scrimmage, by the way, is just another year older, bigger, and more experienced. And Branson Dean has been really good. And Jaden Wayne was rocking and rolling with the third team on Saturday. So I think he's going to get some decent looks throughout this season. Miami's gotten longer at cornerback. The defensive backfield looks pretty dramatically different than what it did a year ago. And schematic-wise, there's a lot more movement on offense and on defense. I think the Canes are going to be a complicated, difficult team for any opponents to line up against. So overall, you guys know I've been accused of being a sunshine pumper by some of you, probably the undercover Gator fans and Florida State fans who come and watch the show, and then they leave these comments like the keyboard warriors out there. But no, Miami's going to be better than they were last year. The question is how much. But 818, I don't want to read too much in what I watched in a scrimmage because you're watching like the back preparations. You're watching the sausage get made when you watch an open practice. So there's only so much I can really take from it. We get a question from our guy, Chalupa Batman, who says, hey, what wide receiver do you see having a season similar to Colby Young last year? Someone who might start off slow, but become more involved in the offense towards the middle to end of the season. Chalupa, I think you could see somebody go through a very similar path to what Colby Young had last year, and that's Shamar Kirk. Similar stories, right? Transferred from a junior college. Kirk, to me, I think he's going to thrive more when full contact starts up, aka when the season starts, because Kirk's specialty is yak and eluding tackles, and you're not really tackling at this time of year. You're thudding and doing a little bit of hitting. And I think this is the type of guy in Kirk who's, he's adapting from the junior college speed to soon the Power 5 and ACC speed and going up against a team like Texas A&M. So, Colby Young, who came in last year from JUCO and blossomed, about midway through the season, I think you could see Shamar Kirk do the same thing. Coming over from Reedley College, I think you're going to see him start to blossom as the season goes on. He'll probably start the season as maybe a second-team wide receiver, and he'll get more and more burn as the year goes on. So I think that there's a lot of similarities there. We get this question from James. I like this one. It sounds like several starting spots will go to freshmen, he says. That's good for them, but isn't that a bad thing for the team overall? Because we might go 6-6 while these kids develop, he says. Now, James, for the most part, the freshmen that we talk about so much are going to be providing important depth, not starting. I think when my show and so many others talk about all these freshmen that are playing really well, I think it makes people assume that, hey, like 7 or 8 of these guys are going to be in the starting lineup. We're not going to have any experience. I don't think that's going to be the case, okay? Now, there's a couple, right? I think Francis Maui-Noah for sure, almost for sure, he's likely going to be the starting right tackle, but this guy is a better option than most of the veteran tackles in the ACC. I mean, Francis, he's an exception to the rule. He is special. He is ready. Right? There's some other guys competing for starting jobs. Damari Brown might start at cornerback. That's not set in stone yet. He's out there competing. Now, in the case of Damari Brown, he comes from one of the very best high school programs in the country when it comes to developing cornerbacks and defensive backs. So Damari Brown out of American Heritage is probably more ready than most freshmen would be. A guy like Ruben Bain. Ruben Bain will likely be a second teamer, not a first teamer, but if he does end up starting some games, I think he's ready and he's better than most of the defensive ends in the ACC right now. Mark Fletcher, I don't think will be a starting running back, but probably second or third team, and he's going to play a lot, especially in the red zone because he's more powerful than Miami's other backs. Ray Joseph, probably a second or third teamer, but he's going to get on the field at receiver and slot receiver. And, all the new linebackers are doing well, but I don't think any of them are going to be starters, in my opinion. So, I think sometimes when we talk about, oh, this guy, that guy, they're shining so bright, only maybe 1, 2, 3 of these guys are going to end up actually being starters. I think most of the true freshmen are going to end up being quality depth, rotational guys, get on the field a lot. And listen, you might have to take a few lumps. If you're relying heavily on class of 2023 guys, I don't think Miami's going to go 11-1, 12-0 college football playoff. Miami's going to lose a few games this season. There's no question about it. But I don't think as many of these guys are going to be starters as you might think, okay? We get a question from our guy, Q Irvin, who says, good morning, Alex DeGreat. He says, besides Frank Ladson, who's been a big surprise in camp so far? And yet, Ladson's done really well. I'll give you another receiver. I'd say Michael Redding III. He was excellent in the scrimmage on Saturday. Redding was catching everything, not working with the first team, but with the third and second team. Michael Redding was looking really sharp out there. Branson Dean, the transfer defensive tackle, he's been really good. I don't know how excited people were when he came in from Purdue, but I think Dean is going to end up probably starting next to Leonard Taylor. And, he's got pretty big shoes to fill with Darrell Jackson after that whole saga took place, but I think Branson Dean's going to do really well. All right, we get some recruiting questions that I want to get to on the other side because, people are, they're starting to get a little excited, right? I mean, I know a 3-star Mario, he struck again. You did get a couple 3-stars over the weekend, but you also got a high-level 4-star defensive end in Elias Rudolph, and you're wondering if a little bit of momentum can come out of this. So we will talk about it. We got recruiting questions about Zay Mincey, Kamarion Franklin, David Stone. We got a lot of questions about conference realignment and what role Miami is going to play in that. So you want to keep it locked right here. Oh, we ain't done yet. We are not done here on Locked On Canes. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. And for the everydayers, if you want to take that everydayer experience to the next level, join our exclusive SMS texting community through Subtext. I include a link in the show description below. You get text updates, SMS texts directly from my phone to yours. One-on-one questions you guys can ask me anytime. Recruiting updates, practice updates, breaking news. Try it free for 14 days. And then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of extra added value on there. So check out the link in the show description below. Let's see. We get a question from Ardrey in Pensacola who says, hey, any news on any new recruits? So somebody we've been looking for, there's been some buzz. We'll see what happens here. There's been some buzz on Zay Mincey, defensive back, 6'3", mainland high school in Daytona Beach. I'd love to have Zay Mincey. We'll see what happens. I know Florida has really been fighting for him. There's been a tug of war between Miami and Florida for Zay. My understanding is if he does end up picking Miami, they want him to play cornerback. They love those 6'2", 6'3" corners. They love that length in that defensive backfield. And obviously, if you are able to land Mincey, that can only help you with his high school teammate, L.J. McCray, the 4-star defensive lineman that Miami loves. So we will see what happens there. Now, you do have announcements for sure coming up later this month. On August 19th is when we are going to get an announcement. Hold on. Well, I'm trying to get my cat because David Stone, I think, is going to be. I'm going to circle back to that because somebody asked me a question about that. But we do have a couple of defensive linemen, Kamarion Franklin and David Stone, who are going to. I think Franklin is the 19th and David Stone is the 26th. I had like all these calendar dates like circling through my head. I'm like, wait, who's on the 19th and 26th? I think it's Franklin on the 19th and David Stone on the 26th. We'll circle back to them in a second. We get a question from Lowell. Lowell says, hey, the recruiting class seems to be getting close to full. Realistically, how many spots are left in the class of 2024, and will that limit who we go after between now and early signing day? Something to note is the NCAA does not currently have a cap on recruiting classes. I know in the past the cap was 25. That's obviously not in place because Georgia has like 28 guys in their class right now. There is no cap right now. Miami's got 21 verbal commits in 2024. I could see Miami ending up with somewhere in the 26 to 27 range when it's all said and done. So you're not looking at too many spots left. But the other thing you have to remember is between now and December, I'm just being real here. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on who it might be, but I'm just telling you, realistically, maybe a couple of the guys currently verbally committed might flip elsewhere. And you're probably going to flip a couple guys who are verbally committed to other places. So, that's going to kind of wash out. And then you're going to end up probably bringing 4 or 5 different uncommitted players between now and December. So I don't know. I'm thinking maybe 26, 27 guys in the recruiting class, but it's not going to make Miami slow down on the 5 and 4 stars that they're pursuing. I think the game plan has been they want to set their floor with a lot of these 3-star developmental guys, so they already have them set, and then they're going to take some big swings again between now and in December, and then late signing day in February if there's anybody left uncommitted at that point. We get a question from David T. This is a good question. He says, "Hey, in your opinion, what are the chances Emory Williams wins the backup job over Zachary Brown before the Miami of Ohio game?" Now, again, I try not to overreact to something that I see in a scrimmage, but Zachary Brown was not very sharp in the Canes Fest scrimmage, and Emory Williams, he was pretty sharp, and he's been sharp throwing the football. So, if you go by what we saw in the spring game, where, again, Zachary was not very sharp, and then in the fall scrimmage, not very sharp, and Emory has looked pretty good with the third teamers, you say, hey, there probably could be or should be a competition for the backup quarterback job. So we'll see if it continues to trend that way. Now, obviously, something you're not seeing in scrimmages when it comes to full contact, the extra running ability of Zachary Brown, where he provides that different dimension that Emory Williams does not provide. But when it comes to throwing footballs, that's something that Emory has excelled at. So I'm going to say maybe he's got like a 30% chance and growing opportunity to win the backup quarterback job. But to this point, Zachary Brown has been taking the second team reps and Emory has been taking the third team reps. We get a question from Leeds who says, "Hey, how important is it for the Canes to recruit these developmental players compared to the drive for the 4 and 5 star targets?" It's very important for a couple of reasons. Like if you're literally only shooting at 4 and 5 stars, then if you miss out on everybody, you're in big trouble. Okay. Like you need to set your depth with a lot of these 3-star and developmental guys. Right. But then the other thing is a lot of these quote unquote developmental guys are something that Miami staff, when you've got people like Alonzo Highsmith and Jason Taylor and Alex Mirabal and Mario Cristobal and so on, and Kevin Beard scouting talent, wouldn't you trust those guys more than you trust some nerd who writes for one of the recruiting services who's like, I went to camp last week. I went out to this high school camp, and this guy looked really good. I think he's a 5-star. Now, of course, I value the recruiting services. I use them. I use the recruiting services, and I love watching tape, but I don't think these guys know more than Jason Taylor and Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal and Kevin Beard and company, right? So, sometimes the evals are just going to be different. And the evals of your staff, they may look at somebody who the recruiting nerds have as a 3-star, and in their eyes, well, this guy's really a 4-star, and he can fit into our system. So it's incredibly important, Leeds. No question about it. We get a question from Mike in Pompano. We got a couple questions like this. He says, "Hey, Donno, is realignment in the future of the ACC, is it affecting Miami in recruiting?" I've heard no actual evidence of that. Like when I talk to recruits about conference realignment, like they don't seem to care that much in the conversations that I've had. Something that does matter to a lot of players, and I don't think this is really even anything to do with realignment. A lot of players just like the idea of playing in the SEC, right? But I don't know if Miami and the ACC's current situation changes that, because a lot of players have always loved the idea of playing in the SEC. But again, I think this is going to become more of an issue down the road. Like if the ACC continues to weaken, and if Miami were to hypothetically get stuck in a weaker version of the ACC, that could become a factor down the road. I don't really have any evidence that it's a factor right now. So maybe not a short-term factor, but it could be a long-term factor We get a question from Marcus who says, do you think Clemson and or Florida State will leave the ACC by tomorrow? Yeah, there is some kind of an August 15th deadline there. My answer is no. I don't think it's going to happen by tomorrow. I think a lot of Florida State's very, very public declarations have been trying to put pressure on the ACC and kind of trying to beg, please, Big Ten, SEC, whoever, bail us out and get us out of here. The fact that it hasn't happened to this point, I don't see anything changing by tomorrow. I think for at least another year, Florida State, Clemson, we're all stuck together. I think that I don't think anyone's leaving the ACC by tomorrow. I've been wrong before. Conference realignment can change very quickly, but I do not expect Florida State or Clemson to give notice by August 15th that they're getting the heck out of the ACC. But thank you, Marilyn Kane. Or no, that was from Marcus. This one is from Marilyn Kane. What do you think is going to happen with Miami and conference realignment in the long term? Your guess is as good as mine at this point. I still, I don't know, within the next 3 to 5 years, I still could see Miami ending up in the Big Ten AAU designation. I don't think it was a coincidence, but I would be foolish to try and venture a hard guess on that, Marilyn Kane. We get a question from Caesar who says, hey, what's up, Donno? Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. Any update with the Ruiz investigations? No, I do not have any update on that. If you want updates on Ruiz, probably refresh the Miami New Times page every 15 minutes because they seem obsessed with bringing that guy down. They for some reason, certain Miami papers love trying to go after him. He says, what's up with David Stone? How are you feeling about him? Also, Kamarion Franklin. I've seen he's been crystal balled by Auburn. Is that just an insider jumping the gun, or is there real smoke there? I think there's real smoke there on Kamarion. We told you even, 6 weeks ago, a while ago, that Auburn was making a big push. Auburn, their NIL situation is in exceptional shape, and I think that that's carrying a lot of weight here. Miami, I believe, is still in it, but Auburn has made a serious push, and I don't think it's an insider jumping the gun. I do think that there is real smoke between Kamarion Franklin and Auburn, so we will see what happens there. As far as David Stone, Miami has not given up. Oklahoma have been the prohibitive favorites for a couple of months now, to the point where even though he's not verbally committed there officially, he seems to be recruiting other guys to come to Oklahoma. So Oklahoma are the favorites. I know Miami has really been pulling out all the stops, and they're not going to give up. So David Stone is announcing on August 26th. The aforementioned Franklin is announcing on August 19th, so we do not have long to wait for either of them. All right. Jake from State of Farmers says, hey, what's the buzz on Zay Mincey? I think I already answered this, but there's obviously been some buzz that Miami could be close with Mincey. I know Florida also wants the 4-star safety out of Daytona really badly. I'm sure they've not given up. So probably a Miami-Florida tug of war there. And we get a question from Big Canes fan who says, how many wins does Miami need to have for us to consider the year a success? Also, how many wins to flip some 5-star recruits? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, Big Canes fan. I can give you a number on what I would consider to be a successful season. I think 8 or more is successful given where Miami came from last year. But then some people will hear me say 8 wins. You're like, who is this loser? 11-1, 12-0, 15-0, college football championship. You remember we won 5 national titles? That's the standard at Miami. Anytime you don't win a title, it's an unsuccessful season, is what some people say. So you could get 100 different answers. I mean, for me, probably 8 wins. Now, if you're talking about flipping some of the 5 stars, like if you want to flip Jeremiah Smith, for example, you probably would have to win 9 or 10 games, right? If you're talking about convincing Jeremiah Smith that the wide receiver factory that is Ohio State is not the best spot for him, and Miami is, you probably really have to show a vertical passing game. You win 9 or 10 games. That'd probably be what it would take for a guy like him. So I appreciate the questions, guys. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to hit the thumbs up button, hit that like button, and subscribe. If you listen to the audio version, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Pods, Odyssey, wherever you get your pods. Leave us a 5-star review if you have time to do so. And we will talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.